With me today, Paul Hilton from Cape Cod Collaborative. We are going to discuss what the Cape Cod Collaborative is and how it helps Barnstable school systems. Paul, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, executive director of an organization that's been around for a long, long time. We see the buses all the time, but we're sometimes not sure exactly what you do. So give us a history of the collaborative.
Sure. First, the collaborative does a little bit of everything, and what we do changes year to year. But the collaborative started in 1975 when the communities on Cape Cod and the islands came together and organized to meet the challenges associated with changes in educational law and mental health law across the state, where students were entitled to more education in the school system than they had been previously. So the collaborative worked on behalf of all the school committees on the Cape and Islands to develop programs for what we call low incidence populations, with students with unique challenges, maybe one or two or three in each town. You couldn't staff appropriately to meet their needs. So the school committees formed a collaborative so that they could serve those students together on a regional basis. So we've been a regional entity that meets the needs of the students on behalf of the school districts and the families throughout the region since 1975.
Okay, so how does this organization formed? Is it an advisory board, or is it a closely knit organization that you guys make decisions? How does it work?
Sure. Well, technically the 19 school committees that comprise the collaborative own the collaborative. We're part of each of the municipalities.
Okay.
I think we've been told we're an instrument of each of our member municipalities is the technical term. And as such, we do unique things and work with each of the districts to do things to help support them, to strengthen and support their programs, as well as to develop programs that may meet oncoming challenges as they arise.
So that's interesting. So all of the school committees put forth a person who sits on the board.
Yes.
And when people have ideas or the collaborative is doing something, does that information then get shared out to other districts?
Yes, we have 19 members of our board meet the second Wednesday of every month to talk about what we're doing in the collaborative. But the collaborative also has many advisory groups. We have an advisory group of superintendents, an advisory group of special education directors, an advisory group of business managers, an advisory group of facility directors. And we bring people together to help look at what's happening currently and what's evolving so that we can help meet the challenges that schools are confronted with year to year.
So as professionals, how important it is for just superintendents to meet? You got to figure that, you know, you're top of the food chain there, and having peers to talk with about things that are happening in your district, is that a good, fair way to say that?
I believe every superintendent works to meet the needs of their community. They meet independently and have a group, and I attend that group to make sure that I'm eliciting from them information that helps us meet the challenges that are arising regionally, but also share with them the things that are happening within the collaborative. Our collaborative is made up of school committee members. Other collaboratives are made up of superintendents. So we try to create the symbiosis that information is coming and going from the collaborative at all levels. In many ways, we feel like we have 99 bosses.
That's a municipal government. So let's talk a little bit about the programs of the collaborative. I had mentioned the bus program, but there's lots of things that the collaborative does for all sorts of different districts.
Sure. I think the best way may be to explain back to the history of the collaborative.
Sure.
An example that's often used is for students with unique challenges, such as students with intellectual disabilities. Back in the 1970s, were served initially in districts, but then in collaboratives where you could have more effective instruction for some of the populations of students when you were able to meet them at grade level and at performance level on a regional basis and bring more resources to bear. Also, as you were in the 1970s, we had a large population of students with visual challenges and hearing difficulties. At different points in time, the collaborative had very large classes or very large programs with deaf and hard of hearing or visually impaired populations of 40 to 60 students with cognitive disabilities, somewhat significant. As the collaborative worked with the districts and the districts developed their own programs, the populations were more effectively served in the districts with support services. But as you came into the 1980s, 1990s, students with autism became a challenge that were difficult for districts to initially meet. And the collaborative developed programs initially to work with those students, but also to support those students in districts. And as districts progressed and programs developed, the collaborative population shifted, and we continue to serve more low incidence, but it tends to be more intense special needs, and programs for students with unique challenges that can be more effectively served when the resources are pooled by the districts. And the collaborative, being owned by all the districts, is a unique place for for districts to pool their resources to run effective programs.
That's so interesting. And talk about, I believe it's the Challenger program?
The Challenger program is a social and recreational programming that is co-located with the collaborative.
Right.
It's a nonprofit that was founded by Amy Lipkind and Kelvin Eng, a couple from Sandwich. And when we moved to the Osterville Elementary School, we moved one of our programs, and they used the building afternoons and weekends to run special programs. And it was a great symbiosis with a nonprofit serving a similar population to the populations that the collaborative serves in some of the programs.
That's amazing. When we look at the collaborative, and we know that now, because you're helping us to understand that it's really town and district-wide and region-wide, what are some of the initiatives this past year through your annual report that you want to highlight so people really understand? I know there's a lot in that document. We won't go page by page. But what are some of those things that you'd like to highlight for residents here in Barnstable?
Sure. Districts are doing an amazing job on Cape Cod meeting the needs of the students. And Cape Cod is very lucky to have the number of resources committed to students that they do. And on the Cape, the collaborative runs 2 public day special education programs, one in Osterville and one in Sandwich. And these 2 programs serve unique populations that have unique challenges in their education. And we have 50 to 65 students at each of the sites with very intense staffing. Those programs, the STAR program in Osterville was started in 2010 after community-based, school-based programs. The population was too intense for those settings. And our Waypoint Academy is our alternative education program, which was started in the year 2000 on the former Naval Air Force Base, and recently moved from the Otis Memorial School to the Wing School in Sandwich. Those are 2 of the primary special education programs. But among the things we're doing more often now is a municipal government, not a company and not a nonprofit. Our goal is to finish at $0 every year. And we strive to do that every year, and sometimes we come close, sometimes we don't. And we've been doing more and more general education transportation, partly because the schools need the flexibility of deploying the resources in manners that they see appropriate. So that seems to be a very evolving area. Many people in Barnstable and on Cape Cod may be behind a Cape Cod Collaborative bus or van on occasion. We have a rather large fleet, but our goal is to meet the needs of the students, the families, and the districts in a very flexible and nimble way, and to be cost effective and efficient in what we do. So if we run 100 vehicles, we want to finish at 0, and if we run 10 vehicles, we want to finish at 0. We also run a residential gifted and talented program at Mass Maritime every summer, and this coming summer will be our 15th summer. And it started 15 summers ago with Dr. Joe Gilbert, who's a former superintendent from Harwich. And integral at that time was Admiral Gernon, who was the president of Mass Maritime, and Fran McDonald, who is the current president of Mass Maritime. And Fran was instrumental in working with Dr. Gilbert to develop that program. And it's been very sustainable and growing since that time. We'll continue to look at that program and try to expand it and develop it to the extent is possible to support those students. We've also worked with districts on grant initiatives. We have special career and vocational programming for students that aren't able to get to the tech schools, partly due to circumstance when they move into town, or it may be due to their capacity to maintain their enrollment in school. So we're working at integrating vocational opportunities for students with grant activities. We're looking with district support. We have a program, a grant initiative that we've been running. This is the 3rd year, and we're looking at 3 more years to help support the superintendents and the leadership within districts in developing their internal capacity to manage change and to manage instruction going forward. So they're very strong resources in the districts, but we want to make sure that they're sustainable, and we work with the districts to pool the capacity to support them going forward. I can keep on going or I can stop, but among other things we've done very interesting is we're now working with some international programming and matching some international groups with the districts in terms of students visiting from abroad and students going from districts on Cape Cod and creating partnerships that are sustainable. Some districts have great partnerships already, but we're looking at developing and sustaining relationships with some of the districts that haven't.
Well, this, like alluded to in our beginning, is that it's not going to be our last conversation because there's just so much going on at the Collaborative. But if you could briefly tell us, what are some of the initiatives for this new academic year as we just started it? You know, the Collaborative is such an integral part now of our school systems. What's on the horizon?
Well, I'd say first and foremost, every year has a new horizon for the Collaborative. We're always working with districts to identify things as they happen and as they evolve. You mentioned transportation, and I'll mention transportation, that will continue to be an area that we see a lot of development. For programming for students, we're looking to reevaluate and reinitiate some investment in our summer program for the students that are gifted and talented. In the middle school, but also on a regional basis. We're looking at a current grant opportunity for leadership development within districts on behalf of the districts that are involved. And we'll continue to work with all of our advisory groups, whether they be superintendents, special education directors, curriculum directors, or business managers, in terms of developing grant programming or shared professional development to meet the needs of the districts as they exist currently and as they exist going forward.
How can people learn more about your organization?
We have a website that we're going to continue to develop. Speaking of initiatives, we publish an annual report every year that gives a bird's eye view of the things we're doing. And people can listen to their school committee meetings. Some of their board representation may give a quick update regarding the Collaborative, or they can really look onto the website and get more information about the programming that's offered.
And that website address?
Is capecodcollaborative.org.
Well, that was
simple
fairly
but
easy.
long.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Paul. We really enjoyed learning more about this important organization, and especially that all of our region is collaborating.
Yes. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right, take care.